Alright, morning guys, another video, same filthy jacket as usual. So as you can see, we have the E66 in the barn again, and the objective of today's video is to replace both of these items. So this is actually the left side headlight lens. I picked one of these up online, very cheap. Now the reason I'm only replacing the left side lens is because maybe about 4 years ago or so, my right side headlight was actually hit by another driver. He cracked the lens, we had to replace the entire headlight. So that one's nice and fresh looking. The one on the left is horrible looking, as you can see from this footage here. So it's very pitted. I've done sanding, wet sanding, polished it back. It lasts for about 6 months and then it comes back to the original state again. So replacing the lens is the best option. And while I have the headlights open, I'm also going to replace both the Angel Eye rings. I already have some aftermarket rings installed. They've lasted maybe 6-7 years, and I'm going to install these ones here, the Maruta ones, the Japanese ones, and these are quite expensive. These are about maybe 100-120 euro, so they're pretty pricey. But as you can see, one side of the headlight, one side of the car, the headlight O-rings, the Angel Eyes are very dim compared to the other side, so they're on the way out, so it's a good time to replace these. So only problem with these facelift E66s is the entire front bumper needs to be removed to get at the headlights, which is a real pain in the ass, but it's not the worst job in the world. So once your bumper is off, you can pull out both headlights, you can access the Angel Eye sockets on the underside of the headlamps, and I'm going to show you the very in-depth process of replacing one of these headlight lenses, which is not an easy task because you can't just bake it in the oven and take it off, or even just pry it off with clips. The whole thing has to be cut out, and it's quite an involved process. But again, it's not the worst job in the world. So yeah, let's get started on it right now. So space is going to be a bit of an issue here because, well, I only have, what, 18 inches there? But I'm going to try and make it work. The first thing is I'm going to try and get this number plate off. Again, using only plastic tools. And this is only held on with double-sided tape, so it's coming off fairly easy. There we go. Next, we're going to remove both these trim pieces that have the parking sensors installed. And you always want to remove this from the inside, not from the outside, because you can damage the bumper if you do it incorrectly. So carefully pull the trim piece out towards you and just disconnect the parking sensors. That's one. And two. And that's the center plate off. Then we need to remove these grills. I think these outer ones pull out from the front. Two. Once we're at this level, you can see there's a whole array of torque screws that need to be removed. So there's some in the lower bumper, and then some higher up that need to be removed too. So we're going to get all of them out. In case you're wondering, they're T25s. That's 6, and then we have 2 more up here and 2 more up here. Now you don't need to have your car on a lift to do this, it just makes it slightly easier is all. I've done this before and I've had a large box on the ground and you just let the bumper rest straight onto the box as soon as it comes off, so it's a bit harder on your knees, a bit harder on your joints, but you can definitely do it on the floor. That's them. And the last 3 attachment points, there's I think that's an 8mm bolt here, you've got a push pin down here, and then there's another bolt on the underside too. That's either an 8mm or 10mm. So they come off nice and easy. I'll get them off now. Yep, that's an 8mm. And that's an 8mm on the underside as well. I'm just going to poke this through. There we go. I'm just masking up this area here. There's basically 2 clips in here that need to be pushed down, and then you can remove the side trim. Looks like I forgot a screw. There we go. Now this should just pop off, but we have to remember that the fog lights are still connected. Come on, you fuck. That's one disconnected. And it should come straight off. like so. Jesus Christ. Okay. One E65 bumper. It's in the daylight, you can really see the difference in the two lenses. So this is the one that was replaced previously. And as you can see, this is the original 17-year-old headlamp. Quite a bit of yellowing and nowhere near as clear as that one. So bumpers off. Let's get these headlights out. Well, we're on the home stretch now. All I have to do is remove the headlight washer. Then there's 2 screws on the underside, 2 screws on top. Disconnect the power cords on the back, obviously, and we should be good to go. So yeah, what actually happened in regards to the breakage of the other headlight, I was driving down the road about 4 years ago, and there was a van oncoming towards me. He was pulling a trailer, and it was one of those trailers where the walls are made up of cages, basically, so it's a cage trailer. And of course he hadn't secured it properly, and the whole wall, the whole side of the trailer swung out onto my side of the road. I was beeping at him, flashing at him, stop, stop. He kept coming, smacked off the front of my car. Now in fairness, he did cover it. It was €1,200 for a new headlight. Crazy money. And that's just for the headlight. That was excluding the xenon bulb, that's excluding the ballast, excluding the control unit. Altogether from BMW it was about €2,700. But we did just the headlight and we swapped everything over, so yeah. I did feel sorry for him because he essentially said, that's my holiday fun gone. But these things happen. So yeah, he got a nasty bill unfortunately, and I got a broken headlight. So okay, last thing to do here is disconnect these cables on the back and pull it right. There we go. And that is what a €2,700 headlight looks like. Right, so we're back inside, and that is the headlight I just removed from the car, as you just saw. And here is one that I prepared earlier. So this is the headlight that was removed from the car, broken about 4 years ago, and I spent the last day or two replacing the lens in it with one of the new ones I received online. It looks absolutely immaculate, and as you can see, there was zero comparison between trying to refurb a headlight and replace the lens. If you want it to look like new, this is the way to go. Now, the do's and don'ts. One of the big don'ts with these is trying to bake the headlight in the oven. So you cannot get your oven hot enough. Well, you can get your oven hot enough, but you can't get this seal hot enough without damaging the rest of the headlight. I reckon you're going to be maybe 160 to 180 degrees Celsius before the steel starts to melt, and that's going to be way too hot for the rest of the headlights. So do not go down that route. I think the E65 series is pretty much the same kind of deal. You basically need to cut it out, and what I use to cut it out is this Dremel tool. Now if you get yourself one of these attachments, my god, it's so much easier. It's so lightweight, so flexible, and it's really easy to basically cut around the whole perimeter of the headlight. Obviously you don't want to go too deep, otherwise you're going to be encroaching on the internals. But once you have that cut piece removed, you can then run a razor blade around the outside, break the seal, and you can use a heat gun to basically pull out the remnants basically. It should come out in maybe 2 or 3 pieces. It stays fairly well attached. Clean up your channel, relay your new butyl seal. Butyl you can get on Amazon for pretty cheap. I recommend an 8 to 10 mil butyl for this channel because it's a pretty big channel. And you want to heat that up, reseat your lens, put your clips back on, and that's your headlight resealed again. So yeah, one of the main complaints about the E65 7 series is just to get at the Angel Eye LEDs. You got to remove the entire bumper, as you just saw, remove both headlights just to get at this socket, which is on the underside of the headlight. That's what makes it so awkward. So that's the actual socket there for the Angel Eyes. So yeah, I want to get started on this right now. It's probably about a 1.5 to 2 hour job if you've done it before. It'll probably take you a bit longer if you haven't. If anyone is interested in picking this up off me, let me know, shoot me a private message, and we can agree a price. So this is brand new, it's working, it just doesn't have the ballast and it doesn't have the control unit, but you can transfer your own over. So yeah, looks brand new, looks really good. So first thing you want to do is remove this bracket on the underside. It's held on with these 2 screws. and that slides straight off. Now I'm going to remove this sealant here. So BMW actually plastic weld this on, as you can see. They just kind of melt the ends, pop off the seal, and this is already rotten and broken. So this seal just pops off fairly easily. Be as gentle as you can because it is very, very fragile. And that's the two separate parts. Now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 brackets that hold it together. And we have 2 screws, and that's basically all that holds the lens on along with the sealant. So we've got a screw here and a screw here. They are Torx, and they are, if I recall, what size is that? That's T10. So these are T10 screws. And then we can remove our brackets. So that's 1, 2, and 6. All right. And that's essentially the lens loose. The only thing at the moment now that's holding that lens in place is the actual seal. And like I say, you can't break that with heat. It's just impossible. So yeah, let's start cutting. Now one thing is, I noticed on the other one as well, it looks like it's open here. So when I have the brand new lens installed, it's going to look like it's not installed properly. That's the way they are. Well, certainly the way the two of mine are. There's actually a 2 or 3 mil gap in this particular location, but otherwise it sits nice and smooth and flush all the way around the outside. I'm going to give this a quick wipe down before I start. It's generating a lot of dirt. You want to make sure your workplace is nice and clean as soon as this headlight gets opened. At this point, I'm actually just going to remove this angel light. So this rotates maybe about 20 degrees. As I mentioned before, this is already an aftermarket LED, so this isn't the original one. The original angel eyes are basically yellow, which is pretty dated at this stage. But they do look good. They have a kind of a retro look to them. But there we go. So I'm just going to have that removed. I'm going to reinstall this. Okay, so we're going to start cutting. Essentially the lens is attached to, there's an inner shroud in there, so the shroud is screwed onto the lens. But like I mentioned, as soon as the seal is broken, the lens is going to come out with that shroud attached to it. But you'll see what I mean in a moment or two. I'm using ear protection and eye protection because this gets pretty loud. So yeah, let's get cutting. As I mentioned, you want to cut this as close to the outside here as possible, and I had good success with that last time. Okay, I'm just going to clean off my workbench before I open this up. Okay, so we gently lift this out. Oh, and I forgot. We need to detach our fiber optic connections, which you can do before you do this step, but I forgot all about these. There's basically 2 ports on the back, and you can get at these fairly easily. So that's how they disconnect. So yeah, despite our efforts to keep the area clean, the inside of the headlight's covered in dust. So having compressed air, excuse me, it's in my throat now, is very useful for cleaning this out. So this is the channel I was talking about. We're obviously left with the remnants of the lens stuck in that channel. Now what I do at this point is I essentially run a razor blade, if I can find it. There it is there. So you can basically sink the blade all the way in between the black plastic and the actual lens itself, which is basically like that. Okay, so I think that's as far as I can cut. Now even right now some of this is actually quite loose, but getting the heat gun in really helps out. But you know what, let me see if I can pull this out. So I didn't just get lucky with the last one, it came out pretty much just as easily last time, but I did use the heat gun and I'm probably going to have to use it on the corners here just to get out in one piece, or as close to one piece as possible. And it's fairly well seated in there, so I might use the heat gun there. So I lost a bit of footage there, but anyway, this, as soon as I heated that corner, the whole piece came off as one, as you can see, which I'm delighted with because the last one came off in 1 or 2 pieces. So the last thing to do is basically to clean up these channels. I've actually already started on that channel. Basically all the butyl, you basically just need to use a knife, cut it out and use a sharp object like a screwdriver. Even a metal part's fine, because even if you score the inside of the channel, it still gives it a nice key for the new sealant anyway. So yeah, this is time consuming. This can take half an hour, 40 minutes to get it done right. So yeah, I'm going to keep going with it. Right, I think I have most of it out. That's the kind of level of cleanliness that we require on the channels. As you can see, there's barely anything in there at all. I still need to blow the whole thing out with compressed air, so there is a few kind of rogue pieces sitting in the channel that needs to be cleaned out. But I basically wiped it all down with some thinners or some, you know, if you use some alcohol or white spirits just to clean it all out. So yeah, that's the level of cleanliness that we require. So what I'm going to do now is just set that aside, and I'm going to separate the actual angel eye rings and the inner black shroud from the actual lens itself. So it's screwed on in multiple places. It's actually clipped on here first, and then you have some screws holding it on, like here, here, and here. I think there's some, yeah, there's some down there too. So fairly easy to do. I'm going to clean up this area and get this removed. And the whole thing should now come off. Nice and easy. And here is the replacement lens, which looks absolutely immaculate. I actually got these from AliExpress, believe it or not. I think they were something like €45 for both of them delivered to Ireland. I've actually looked them up since and they've gone up. I think they're around 60 to 70 euro now, so maybe closer to 80 or $90. But I was a little bit worried because the description said they can be plus or minus 1 to 2 centimeters. I mean, if it was off by 1 to 2 millimeters, they'd be useless, let alone 1 to 2 centimeters. But after installing it on the other one, I have to say these are a mirror image. And in terms of quality, and it comes with all the BMW part numbers, possibly the Hella part numbers, because it's a Hella headlamp. These things, I mean, the standoffs, all the standoff screws, or the screw standoffs in exactly the right locations, I mean, millimeter perfect. So it would not surprise me if these come from the same factory the originals are made in, or someone got access to the original blueprints or whatever, and you know, they're just made 100% to spec. So yeah, hopefully they hold up. One thing I noticed is this kind of seam line here. I don't know if it's a mold line or what it is. Now it is on the originals too. It's a little bit more prominent on these than it is on the originals. Maybe time has basically worn it off, or the UV rays have kind of dulled it down a bit, but it seems a tiny bit more prominent on these. But again, I mean, maybe that's the way they were when they were new, I don't know. So let's get this attached to the shroud. I clean up the shroud, clean up the inside of the headlight, and let's get this thing resealed. Just before I attach that to the lens, I'm going to take both of these out to the garage and just use some compressed air to blast them out, because I want to have this completely clean before it's attached to the lens. So I'll be back in 2 jiffies. Yeah, so I find it's easier to get this corner in first, and then you can snap this end back in with a bit of gentle persuasion. like that. That's everything seated, and what I learned with the last headlight is if you basically get all screws just started, but don't tighten them all the way down, because there can be a little bit of adjustment required. But yeah, let's get started. One final check to make sure all the lenses are clean. No more dust. So this is the butyl sealant that I picked up. So I picked up two different sizes because I wasn't sure what size I needed. I have a 6mm and I have an 8mm. Now this is the stuff that's used to, if you've ever taken your door cards off and you've got the inner vapor barrier basically between the door card and the window regulator and all the gubbins of the actual door. This is the stretchy, kind of really thick, goopy black stuff that never really sets. It doesn't really dry, but it's completely impervious to water, moisture, but the main thing is that you seal it correctly. Now, what I find with the other headlight is the 8mm is a fine size. This fits perfectly in the channel. But what I've noticed is this channel is so big on these headlights that you really can't have enough of it. So what I might do is lay a full, I suppose, seal of the 8mm. And I'm going to stick in another seal of the 6mm as well, because I wouldn't mind if it actually gooped out the sides when I fully compress the lens into the headlamp. So that's what I'm going to do. And what I'm going to start with is the 8mm, and I'm probably going to lay the 6mm on top of it. So here's our headlight. Now there's different techniques to this depending on what you're using. You can basically heat up your butyl first, make it soft and apply it. Now I tried to do that. I put this in the oven for about 5 minutes at about 100 degrees Celsius, took it out, and it made it incredibly sticky. And when you pushed in on it, even with your thumb or a screwdriver or whatever you're using, as soon as you took it out again, it came out with it, and it was just stuck to whatever you're trying to compress it with. So it was an absolute nightmare. So I'm actually just going to lay this in, well, if you can call it dry. And once it's in there, we're going to pop it into the oven by itself with no lens for about 15 minutes or so. And that will soften it up enough that we can actually insert the lens and compress it into the actual sealant itself. So as you can see, it's a very good match for this channel. But what I found is some areas like here, for example, it widens really quite a lot. And I'm not entirely convinced that it actually does a full seal. Now one thing I found with this as well is it's kind of more flat here and wider, and then it's narrower this way, so there's a bit of an orientation to the actual sealant as well, so you can be left with gaps depending on how it sits in the actual channel. But anyway, we're going to keep going with this, and I'm going to just compress it all the way in, and I'm going to see if there's enough room for the 6mm. There may not be, and if there isn't, we'll just proceed with this. Now you want to push it in, especially into the corners, right into the corners. And then just keep on going with it. And we get to the very end here. As you can see, that doesn't take very long at all. That only took about 2 minutes. And as you can see, it's extremely stretchy. And I've just overlapped that a little bit, and there's absolutely no harm in doing that. Like I said, there's so much room here. Now we're just going to push this all the way down. So let's see how we get on. I might try this 6mm. Oh yeah, that's quite a bit smaller. Substantially smaller, so I think there should be plenty of room for this. Okay, there we go. So I have my oven preheated to about 110 Celsius. I've removed the ballast and I've removed the control unit. Anything that's unnecessary to be exposed to heat can basically be removed. I'm just setting this on some wood sticks on the bottom of the oven. Make sure it's not touching the walls, make sure it's not touching the base or the top. And we're going to set a timer for 15 minutes. And we'll come back to it then. Okay, so this is just out of the oven. It's still quite hot, but you need to move quickly. Let's get this installed. So I'm going to line everything up. That's all lined up nicely. I'm going to press it down into this corner first. And then push down all the way around. So that's good. I'm going to get my clips on here now. That's one clip installed, just to get it started. Here's another clip. That's in too. Last one goes on here. And now I want to get my screws in over here as quickly as I can. You should feel the lens sucking in a little bit. And that's it. So as you can see, you can't really have too much sealant in here. There's only a small bit is gooped out here. I like to get a shot of this in the daylight. I started this kind of in the afternoon, so it's dark here already at 4:30, 5 o'clock. But that looks absolutely mint. Absolutely mint. So I'm going to get the ballast and the control unit reinstalled, the shroud on the top, the rubber shroud, and then the actual attachment point on the bottom. We can get it back in the car. Oh, and the angel eye, and we'll forget that. You have to terminate this yourself, but it basically just pushes on, so it doesn't take too long. And basically slot them down inside. Perfect. They're a substantially tighter fit than the old ones. That's exactly what you want. And they push these together, make sure the pins don't pop out. They're both still good. And then we just bundle these cables out of the way. Great. Let's get it back in the car. Right, I'm just doing a quick visual test here. So both of these are the old headlights, but they both have the new lenses installed. And these are the original LEDs that I was using. And these ones are so much brighter. It doesn't really come through on camera, but they are super sharp in reality. And all this kind of hazing that you see on camera isn't there at all. That's jet black in person. So these are the new Japanese ones, and these are the kind of eBay jobby ones that I had in the last 7 years or so. Way brighter. So now I have them tested. I have both of the headlights that I want installed in the car, and I'm going to get them reconnected. That's one connection, and then there's a second one on top. So that's where it needs to sit. So we don't want these tight yet, because there's a bit of adjustment here. It has to line up here with the side wing, and you need to make sure that it's not pushed in too far or sticking out too far in relation to the bumper. So we're going to do a test fit of the bumper and make sure everything lines up nice and smooth. Parking sensor, here we go. Okay, that's the car back on the ground. And that looks brand new. So just the angel eyes is one click. We can already see the reflection across the road. Wow, super clean. These actually look way better in person. Again, this is all lit up here on the camera, but that's actually all pitch black in reality, so all you see is the rings. They look really, really good. Just super overexposed on the camera. Yeah, that's closer to what they actually look like in person. As you can see, super, super clean. We'll turn the xenons on, see what they look like. Still a bit of dust on them. Absolutely delighted with how they look. And this is the one that's already 3 or 4 years old, so there's a few marks on it, but nothing major. Wow, what a difference a brand new plate makes. It really cleans up the whole front end. Again, it's not really showing on video. These angel eyes are super bright in person. They're so clean, so crisp. Absolutely delighted with them. And having the new lenses obviously makes the car look, wow, essentially brand new from the front end. I still have a lot of chips and the like I need to sort out on the bonnet, but in terms of the headlights, it looks absolutely perfect. Let's see if I can activate the high beams. There we go. Super clean, super fresh. That's the new lens there. There's like a hint of green on video, but again, that's not there in person. It's completely white, completely crisp in person. But yeah, I think we can call that a successful job. Thanks for watching, guys, and stay tuned for some more content very soon.